I've been working on my pattern for the sweater quilt that I'm making, and I am finishing up sewing the sweater squares together. I've done most of the sewing for those squares on my Brother LX3014, simply to put the machine kind of through its paces with a heavy weight, a bulky weight project. But this is my Singer 1588 from 1937. And the way that I'm going to be putting this quilt together is I'm going to take 5 different sections and sew them together as if they were a rag type quilt. So I'm going to have a knitted side and a fleece side to each section, and then I'm going to have to take 2 sections and sew them together. And that is going to take, that means I'm going to have to sew through 4 thick layers in order to put those sections together. The other way I could have done this was to piece all the sweater pieces and piece all the fleece pieces separately and have a front and a back. But for me, it's been more convenient to make smaller sections at a time. This is, I'm using the 1588 to do the last batch of knitted items. I want to get back into the habit of treadling, because I think this machine might be better for me to kind of be able to go through those 4 layers more easily once I get to sewing the sections together. Now, it's not that the Brother machine couldn't handle this, really, but I think any newer machine should be really, I hate to say it, but it should almost be manufactured to be a heavy-duty machine before you use it to sew through 4 layers of heavy knit fabric. Or the fleece I'm using is fairly thin, but you still have 4 heavy layers. And because I'm going to have to quilt these as well as sew them together, I just think that I'm still an advocate for the old antique machines, and especially in some ways a treadle, because of the action you get when you're treadling. The machine actually seems to have more power. Now, when you're using an electric machine, you're depending on how powerful the motor is. And I've noticed with the Brother, and even my 1591 or my 9913, when the needle hits a more difficult fabric to go through, you then are working against how the motor is moving the belt. And, or in the case of the 1591, how the motor is hitting the gears. Now, any of my electric machines can do this project, but I don't like to always feel like I'm pushing the machine further than it should be going. So I tend to go back to a treadle and a cast iron, very well made machine that basically the 15s, the Model 66s, and the 27s, the 127s. The hand cranks are a little different because you're using your own energy on a hand crank. I think you just get more power with the treadle. Now this is going through this as if this is muslin, and this is 2 layers of bulky fabric. Once I get to 4 layers of bulky fabric, it shouldn't be very much different from what I'm doing now, except that the foot that I'm using, you can see that the toes are flat and they come straight out. So if I fold this in half and then fold it again, That's really what I'm going to be going through. Maybe with not quite that seam allowance, but you can see how that's going to be. And so before I'm done with all the sections, I've been thinking about, gee, what machine do I really want to use for this? I'm going to have to be stitching sections together that are almost this thick. They will have probably a seam that I can follow, but I think this machine, or this type of machine, might be easier than trying to have the brother do that and have me work against the motor. Because when you're working against a motor, an electrical motor is just going to keep going. And you have to stop if it can't handle what you're doing. Otherwise you burn out the motor. If the same situation is set up with a treadle, then all you have to do is usually move the fabric. The machine doesn't jam up the way a motor can jam up or a motor can burn out. So I guess I'm saying that my preference for a very heavyweight project, which is 4 layers of bulky fabric, whether it's knitted fabrics or 4 layers of fleece or sweatshirt fabric, would still be the older machines, either a Singer or a White and a Treadle. There are other brands too, but those are the 2 brands that I have. I have the How, and I think the How could handle this, but I'm not sure about the length of the needle, the thickness of the fabric. I would have to try it out on the How. But again, all of the Wheeler and Wilson I wouldn't try this on, but most of my treadle machines could handle a job of going through 4 layers of fabric, of thick fabric. So this is just another video going along with my other videos on the sweater quilt and how I plan to complete it and which machines I'm going to use.